All right, the time being 5:15 p.m. on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. I'm going to call the meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order. With a quorum of members present, we'll move on to agenda item 1, which is approval of minutes from 5/3/22. Is there a motion? Okay. Oh, Alder Hanke. Second? Alder Lukens. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes have been approved. So item number 2 is a presentation, discussion, and possible action on the RFP responses for 180 East Wausau Avenue. So,
Thank you. I'll keep my portion of this very short and sweet. As you noted, the Economic Development Committee approved a request for proposals at your April meeting for a city-owned property at 180 East Wausau Ave. The city did receive one proposal for that property, infused. So instead of me trying to describe this myself, it's a very unique proposal. I'll ask if Matthew can come up, and he'll be able to provide some more information on it, as well as any Q&A. So Matthew, come on up.
Thanks for having me. If you've been to the building, you know it is a massive building. The building is divided up into kind of a 1/3 section and then a 2/3 section. And the 1/3 section, I want to create a indoor green space. And that's essentially what all the attachments that we have in there. If you think of a botanical garden that you would see, obviously not to the scale of like the Milwaukee biodomes, but any other botanical garden, that's what we want to create is an indoor botanical garden. And so that whole space would be surrounded by flower beds. And then the other challenge to that space is how high the ceilings are. And so we would be building a trellis and pergola type structure to then lower everything down, create the lighting, and then have a bunch of vines. And so you're walking into that north entrance, you'd come in, you'd basically have this gigantic green seating space. So that's the primary use, is to have it as an event space. We would use it for weddings, we would use it for graduations, we would use it for private parties. And then the rest of the building, that east side of that building is a space that we want to put in a kitchen. And then the other 2/3, we would have hydroponic growing devices for essentially herbs and mints. And then part of that, we would have a distillation apparatus because our thought is to infuse the herbs down into tinctures, syrups, and bitters, which you would then put into drinks. And predominantly, we're thinking about doing mocktails. There's the potential future of being more of a bar and having cocktails, but really it would be a day place for people to go to escape the harsh realities of winter. And instead of having coffee, you would have an infused tea, you'd have an infused water-based drink, and that's really what our goal is. So that's kind of where we're at. The building in and of itself obviously needs a new roof. It's currently leaking, so as part of the repairing of the roof, we plan to install solar panels. And I really want to turn it into a fairly energy neutral space. That's another part that's really nice about the large area of it. We can install some large batteries, basically things like Tesla walls. Also with the large size of the area as well as the space, I want to be able to recycle some of the water runoff and use into that green growing area. And then there is a little bit of an outdoor space where we'd have our parking lot, but I would also like to put in a greenhouse in that area, not only to have another space for people, but also to have another growing kind of area. We do expect to do some sales of produce as well. Mostly tomatoes, but as well as all of the herbs that we would be growing, we would also fresh cut and sell. So that's a little bit different because really what you're talking about is buying bulk at the grocery store, going to the farmer's market, which, some of that stuff doesn't exist during the winter time. And so that's kind of what the main plan for the space is a multi-use but predominantly green space for an event space as well as a public gathering space. What questions you guys have?
so the committee have questions? Yeah, Lisa.
I have one, and I did see some of the renderings in the packet, which thank you for including that.
Yeah.
So as far as the aesthetics of the design of
Yeah.
the greenhouse, it looks like you're looking at a higher end build versus, what some people may envision as your traditional greenhouse as far as materials are concerned?
Correct. I think so. We have worked with, let's just say from a wood perspective, I've worked with Ipe, which is kind of like a teak variant, but it's a lot more of a Brazilian hardwood. It's very dark, it's very rich. That's basically what we want is like our flower beds. I expect the flower beds to be about 3 feet high, so about waist level. And then the measurements in terms of the width and everything is at that. And then we would use kind of a darker wood as well as our post for the 4 structures. And then to have kind of a darker wood lattice structure around the side as well as in the top. And then kind of in each of the corners as well as up the lattice trellis, we'd have some vines growing as well. And so that's kind of what we're thinking. So it's not like you go to, like your normal greenhouse where you've got that kind of plastic tarp cover. This is more like a botanical garden.
Right.
And that's why a lot of the growing stuff that we would use for our juices and produce, we'd have some of that in hydroponic, but that would be kind of towards the south end of the building. The actual visible space would actually be a lot more of just kind of like tropical plants and trees and things like that.
And on the outside, it looks like you're looking at a mixture of wood, mixed metals, and glass. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the other, I guess, first aesthetic. The garage doors is the one thing I really don't like about the building. Nobody likes are the garage doors. Those would essentially be all glass, and that would be kind of an immediate thing. And then the other, I guess, service doors that are there are a bit less than ideal, and so we'd want to turn those into window containing doors and more of a wood structure as well. And then there are areas I just went and looked at the building again today where we put in some hardscape around the exterior surface and try to get some of that green vine look going up the exterior. But for sure, the roof is going to be done, essentially like now. And there's always the chance that down the road, some of that metal could be updated. Although it's not that aesthetically poor, the metal in and of itself of the exterior. Yeah.
I'm just thinking as far as it's, aesthetically, it's fit with the area, within
Yeah.
the neighborhood. And I think that the function is definitely a fit within the area. I think it's certainly the uniqueness of what we've been looking for.
Yeah.
In that area. And I do like the fact that, as far as purchase and financing, you have that already worked out yourself.
Correct.
Without a public-private partnership. So that's
Right.
the elevated aesthetic I was talking about is, that type of, it's got a, quasi-industrial feel.
Yeah.
And I think that, aesthetically is a fit for what we want to see in that area.
Yeah.
As well as, working towards the riverfront. So I appreciate the proposal. I'm excited about it. So
Good.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I really like how you worked into the sustainability, like
Yeah.
the solar panels, using the water runoff.
Yeah.
And that's really an important part that I
Yep.
liked in the RFP.
I'm a Wausau kid. I grew up in the northwest side of town. I was hardcore conservative as I grew up in north central Wisconsin, and I became this liberal hippie when I went to Madison, and things like sustainability have become more important to me. It's not a knock on my hometown. It's great. It's just there's not a lot of places that really do that sort of thing. The home that my wife and I purchased is a historical home, and it was gigantic, and there was lots of things that we needed to do to make it energy efficient. We have yet to install the solar panels of that, but we're planning to do so, and so I've worked with these companies before, and I think I have a pretty good idea as to kilowatt hours necessary and things like that. So, yeah, that's an exciting thing for my wife and myself as well. Yes.
Well, I really enjoyed reading through this because I really like the idea of the green space
Yeah.
in Wisconsin, in central Wisconsin. So you said on the outside, the type of plants, maybe some vine type things?
Correct.
So my only, I'm pretty passionate about native species to
Yeah.
Wausau and invasive. We have a lot of issues with invasives.
Yeah.
So that would be my only concern, what would those be? I'm not asking you
Sure.
to say, because I don't
Right.
expect you to know that right now.
Yeah.
But if, some planning with that
Yeah.
could be done, I think it would be good because just to maintain,
Definitely.
maintain the natural environment.
Have you been to Kohler, Wisconsin?
No.
So if you go to Kohler, Wisconsin, the whole Kohler factory has, and I feel like I know what the species is, it's not off the top of my head, but there's a species of vine that is not invasive, and that's kind of slowly over time invaded its way up that building, and that's kind of what the vision that I have. But yeah, I mean, the last thing that I want to do, because we have some invasive vine species just in our yard, I don't want anything like that. Between people like Land Art, Revi, Sue's, there's lots of great resources in the area to work, and I definitely would not want to have any sort of invasive species brought from the exterior. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
you bet.
Any additional questions? Dr. Killian?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and yes, interesting proposal. I like the notion of recapturing kind of former industrial areas and doing something positive with them in this regard. My one question would be, and not just for the protection of the potential buyer, but for the seller, the city as well, in the land transaction, should this go forth, could there be full disclosure on environmental conditions with the property? And specifically, I'm referring to the groundwater, even though it may not have any direct impact on anything. It was my understanding that that should be done.
Yes, so we had a phase one that was linked to a phase one environmental study that was linked to the RFP to which you responded. And then there was, groundwater contamination that was brought to our attention recently. It is not it is not associated with 180 East Wausau. The information is certainly available and can be made available.
Yep.
And I would also note that if there is no digging or drilling or basically,
Excavating.
thank you, excavation of that cap, then there wouldn't be it doesn't pose a contamination risk. We can certainly, like I said, disclose all of the information that we have about that property or anything nearby.
I work at the eye clinic of Wisconsin. I'm one of the owners that's there, and so I'm fully aware of the riverfront contamination, at least from that perspective, and that's kind of what we did as well between capping it, and that's kind of why, even with the greenhouse that's there, and that's why it's nice that it's already paved and asphalted. I have no intent of disrupting that, because I'm sure there's things that nobody wants to deal with, and that's probably why you only also have one proposal, is because there's that whole area of, well, what could this be? And so, I'm fully aware of the potential of that there, and it's nice that you reinforce the fact that, the contamination is not directly related to the property, but I'm fully aware of that.
Right, and it is stemming from a Superfund site close by. And when I mean disclosure, I mean the proper disclosure form in the property transaction. And moving forward, any property the city sells, and that includes Thomas Street, I would like all of the contamination disclosed on any property transaction forms. It's my understanding that's expected in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Sure, and if the city attorney's office would like to say anything else to that, then they're more than welcome, but because they handle those closures and transactions, but yes, we would be disclosing everything that we would need to.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, at least what I'm hearing is that we all seem to be supportive of the proposal and the operation that would take place there. I'll make a motion that we accept this proposal and direct staff to begin negotiation for the sale of the property with the proposer.
Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay.
I do second that.
And I think we had a gentleman in the audience that would like to make public comment about this issue, so if you have a second, go ahead. And just name and address, please.
Hi, thank you for taking my public comment. Will Sue, WILLHSU, address 145770 Walden Boulevard. I'm the managing partner and farmer at Sioux Ginseng Farms. Also, our division of our operation is Sioux Growing Supply. I just want to make a quick public comment in support of the Ashbrenners and acquiring the Wausau Chemical Building, 180 East Wausau Ave. As many of the committee members and council members have mentioned already, turning industrial space into new use that can both draw in and support economic development, as well as the river district and the neighborhood. Second of all, there is increasing demand for and need for indoor and outdoor green space. We partner with Monk Botanical Gardens to have an indoor facility, whether it be at Monk or on the north side of Wausau, would be great, especially when you look at event space. A lot of event space is very sterile, and we need more natural event space, especially indoors, given the 6 months of winter that we experience here or inclement weather. The other aspect of this is the geography of the location. Being on the more northern side of Wausau, businesses and operations on the north side of Wausau are in need of retail options, whether they be food, dining, or event space. And then lastly, the environmental and ecological impact, and obviously the financial impact not being great. Being able to source those plants locally from operations such as ourselves, revi, land art, et cetera, but also the supplies for those things, and then repurposing, whether it be for soil or soilless type of growing. We do all that we do a lot of that locally, but then also thinking about the waste streams and how they're able to recycle food waste, packaging, et cetera, at composting facilities such as ours, so that we can kind of make sure that those waste streams don't end up environmentally damaging or in the landfill. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, is there any other further discussion from the committee? All right, so all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Sweet. All right. Discussion, or point number 3, discussion and possible action on approving commercial rehab loan for 101 Pub at 101 North 3rd Avenue. So, hello.
Hello. I'm really excited to be here. It's probably been a good 3 years since we've had a commercial rehab loan application, and not only do we have one, we have 2, and possibly another one in the hopper. So things are happening, and it's exciting. So the first one is the 101 Pub. Matt Brewer is put in a request, and Matt? I don't want to take the spotlight away from him, but in the packet it talks about, kind of gives a drawing of his beer garden, his proposed beer garden. He's got the space for it. I talked to Bill Hebert, and everybody's happy with stuff. When you take a look at what his ask is, we reviewed the quotes and determined that $82,000 qualify for the commercial rehab, which ends up being about 14%, 14.571 to be exact, percent of the total project. So we're excited about this. I think it's going to bring more life down in that area. I think it's a perfect fit. So if you have anything to add, or?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we're excited about this project. You know, we've been there for a year now. Things have been going amazingly, and I appreciate all of your support thus far, and we just are very blessed to have the property and watch it grow. So thanks.
Any additional questions? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. And I guess just for the sake of clarification, the commercial rehab loan that we use is a recycling pot of money that we have been loaning, reclaiming through payments and reloaning for decades, and that it is not a partnership using levy dollars. It's correct, Tammy?
That is correct.
And so just so that we're clear on that, these are the best business loans we can make because they pay us dividends over and over and over. So I'm excited to see this. I also serve on the Public Health and Safety Committee, where we've met with Matt about the operation of the establishment and, even approved outdoor events there, and it's been very well managed, and it's been a good partner with its neighbors. And so I think this is going to be an addition there, and he's been running it very, very well. So I intend to support it.
Thank you.
Alder Hinkie.
Is this going on the north side or on the east side by the alleyway there?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I just want to say thanks for investing in Wausau.
Absolutely, buddy.
So, motion? Alder Killian, move to approve the loan application. I'm trying to get back to the thingy. So you'd move to approve the commercial rehab loan for 101 Pub?
Correct.
Okay, is there a second? Alder Hinkie? Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
And then number 4, another commercial rehab loan, yay. Discussion and possible action on approving commercial rehab loan for Wausau's Liberty Gardens LLC at 608 North 3rd Avenue.
This is another exciting one. A lot of things happening on South 3rd Avenue. This is North, sorry. So Tyler Voigt is here. He approached us with not only a rehab of a building, but a rehab of a neighborhood, which we're really excited that this area has needed for some time. He's putting a lot of time and energy into it. And again, Tyler, I don't want to steal your thunder, so come on up. When we took a look at the project costs, his total ask would end up being $111,000 with an extra $3,000 for soft costs. Total package cost is 18%, so it's right in line again. We usually don't like to go any higher than, typically it's been 22, 24% of the cost. This is right in line.
So if you'd have any statement, or does anybody have questions? Alder Hanky?
I see ask for 145. Is 114 going to get you far enough to
Yeah,
keep things
the reason
moving?
that I'd asked for a little bit more is in one of the estimates that we had to re-brick the front of one of the buildings, that's 100% in the estimate. The additional ask was because they are uncertain, once they remove the paint from the front of the other building, what condition those bricks will be in. So they couldn't give me a fixed cost on that. It's a best guess, but either way, it's a good investment. So.
Yeah.
But that's why there was a discrepancy.
Okay. And just again, thanks for developing that area.
Yeah, I'd answer any questions, but I don't know if you guys have any.
Alder Rasmussen?
Thank you. I guess I'd like to comment in support of this one as well. We met with Tyler recently in the SISM committee because he was looking at rooftop access on the roof of what formerly was the diner at 3rd and Qua. And so as part of this like neighborhood rebirth, the SISM committee had actually approved some egress into the right-of-way for a stairway to access that rooftop where he'll have seating. And that really is kind of a game changer for that area. And I think that, you know, as we start to see these other properties fall into line, the investment that is going to be made into that neighborhood really is a nice shot in the arm for them. And I think they've, you know, he's gone out and met with neighboring businesses who are excited to see what he can do with this block. So I also am supportive of this project.
Yeah, we have, there's a couple of two-bedroom apartments on site too. Actually, I bought a stove for one of my new tenants yesterday. That's been in need of some attention for some time. There's a small house in the corner that was a part of this purchase, as well as a coin shop and another vacant space. I already talked to an artist about turning into a studio for her art. She's a graduate from the IB program right up at Liaki, and she's got her own EIN already, and she wants some help. Now, anyways, I'm going to help her out. But then we have two other commercial fronts there too, and another building we'd be looking at in a phase 2 and a phase 3. I kind of had a pretty
There's a big.
there's a big vision, but this is the beginning of it. The first thing we need to do is bring up foot traffic, and a diner is obviously the first thing that's underserved up in that space, and it brings people out. And the inside of it's about 85% done already. I've been working on it for a few years, but now it's time to get the outside up to speed.
Alder Killian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vogt, what's the time frame look like on the renovations and so forth?
So Hilo Masonry or whatever is the name of the company that we're using to do the tuck pointing. They've done the Shepherd and Schaller building. They did the building between Malarkey's and the Mint, as well as all kinds of projects all over the middle of Wisconsin, central Wisconsin. They're going to be able to do the bricking starting in November. They're going to use tarps and scaffolding and keep everything nice and warm so they can work on it through that time period. I can do the roof ahead of the bricks, and I'm not sure if we want to do the storefront before we start throwing bricks off the building. So I'm going to talk to the people involved with that, but everything should be done this year. That would be the goal.
Well, great, and I think it is positive to bring some investment into this area of town, so looks like a good project. Thank you.
So would there be a motion to approve? Alder Killian, is there a second? Alder Rasmussen? Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you
Nope.
for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Can we move 6 and 7 up? Okay, so we're doing a little rearranging of the agenda. We're going to move and talk about number 6 and number 7 prior to number 5. So starting with number 6, update on Gorman and Co. West Side Battery redevelopment at 415 South First Avenue.
Yeah, so I just wanted to update the committee with this, about what's going on with this project. I know it's been anticipated. So we have the unfortunate news that Gorman was not awarded the competitive tax credits for that project in this year. They did look at reworking the project for a non-competitive deal, but then they ended up needing to fill a $1 million funding gap, which we looked at several sources, and we were unable to fill that. So we are planning to extend the planning option agreement with them that runs through the end of this year and then resubmit for competitive tax credits in December. So one of the things that I think is important to note is because of the timing of this RFP last year, it came out we decided on it, I think in October or November. And those tax credits are due in December. So they could have submitted, and what they'll do this year is submit for 2 different kinds of tax credits for WIDA. They were unable to do that last year because of the timing of the RFP, and they had other projects that were lined up for tax credit submission. So that is the plan as we know it right now. I guess that's all I really have for you, other than that they didn't receive the tax credits, but we have a plan to move forward with this project because they are not willing to let it go, nor do we really think that that's a good idea to let that go either, so.
Any questions from the committee?
I have one. So contractually with the planning option, we were obviously excited about this project.
Yes.
It's a project that we need. We had agreed to partner with them on an ARPA investment into the property. I think as long as we can meet the spend down requirements of the ARPA dollars, I think we also should right away authorize the staff to negotiate or to update that planning option to extend whatever dates are necessary to get them to that December. So if you need to extend those dates out further for them, I think that it makes sense for us as a committee to support that right away. Just so that you have what you need to go forward and reapply. So when would they receive notice of that December application process? Spring?
Yeah, I think that they received the notice for this tax credit. I'm trying to remember. It was late April, I think, if I recall correctly. So it was a little bit later than they had been expecting. One of the reasons also WIDA had held back a tax credit that they were planning on releasing due to some other projects that they had kind of backed up. So like next year we should be on track for a more normal year of submission. But yeah, we should know in spring next year. Couldn't tell you the month exactly.
So the lack of tax credits on the project really isn't only a hindrance to the construction. I mean, if it was only gap financing, we could look at half a dozen other options. But I guess clarify for me, the reason they need the tax credits in the first place is for their ongoing operational expense. And those tax credits then allow them to rent at a lower rate than market rate long-term going forward, correct?
Yes,
So
yes.
even if we were able to fill the gap to get them started, they still need the WIDA credits to operate that building. Is that?
Yes, that's my understanding. I've talked with both Trent and Ted from Gorman actually today to make sure that I fully understood this issue and what we needed to do, and this seems to be the best route forward that they suggest us taking as well.
It's absolutely a project worth waiting for, so I think we should support the extension.
And we should be able to apply the Neighborhood Investment Fund grant money in a timely manner as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, we'll move on to item number,
Sure, sorry, one thing came to me. So there's been some discussion with the Plan Commission recently about the parking possibility across the street. So until the financing is in place, will that be kind of put on hold, or it will?
Yes.
Okay, so similar pause in time frame, I'm guessing?
Yes, they want to make sure that they have the tax credits before they purchase the property, because they wouldn't purchase that property if they weren't able to do
Yes.
the project.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
any other questions? Okay, so moving on to number 7, update on marketing plan and Wausau area marketing specialist position.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this. So you have the job description included in your packet. If you recall, I think it was back in February, this committee authorized a partnership with the Community Foundation, a donor-advised fund at the Community Foundation, in which we would invest $20,000 of our marketing budget, basically to help market Wausau to Wausau, so to create some of this resident attachment and help people who live here better understand and connect with some of the assets that we have in this area. So you'll see the position description in the packet. That was a collaborative effort between the donor community foundation and our economic development department. That I understand is being posted on LinkedIn and Indeed, at least those two today. I have not received a link for that yet, so if it's not today, it's imminent. And I also want to say, we actually had assistance with this job description from Great Lakes Urban and their Neighborhood Connector program as well, which was highly informative of how to really articulate the resident attachment component of this and how to, and some of the criteria, which I think is really interesting. As you'll note in that job description, there is no educational minimum, and that's because we really feel like this position can come from anywhere in the community. We just really need the right person who loves this community enough and wants to connect and engage with people.
Does the committee have questions?
I have just a comment. I think this is huge for us, and, we've recognized that we've spent a lot of time on external marketing to attract both new employers and new workforce, which we absolutely need to continue on. But I think it's also important that we need to recognize that we put a concerted effort together to retain the talent we have and make sure that the people who live here not only are able to utilize but appreciate the amenities that their community offers. So I'm excited that that's moving forward. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No? All right. Then moving back to number 5, discussion and possible action on waiving noncompliance with condition precedent to city's obligation to provide tax increment grant installment pursuant to development agreement, Mountain Lanes, at 1401 Elm Street. Director Burdick?
Yeah, I'm actually going to turn this over to our outside counsel, attorney. I actually, Rowing, I'm going to pronounce that, mispronounce that, to kind of brief us on the history of how we got here and what basically the implications are for this.
Thank you, Ms. Broderick, Madam Chair and committee members. As Liz mentioned, I'm Isaac Rowing of Quarles and Brady. By and large, this agreement from 2019 has been complied with. As was noted in the packet, there was a technical issue that came up that was identified last year. Staff attempted to work with the developer to rectify it. It was not solved, so we're coming to the council and this committee to get direction as to whether the council would be willing to waive one particular requirement in the agreement. In short, the agreement required, the development agreement required that the developer put on the real estate records for public notice of the existence of the agreement before any type of mortgage or other document. Unfortunately, there was a mortgage that was recorded before that memorandum, but they did comply with that written notice of the agreement. By and large, again, it's my understanding from city staff that the developer has complied with the agreement, has built the building, and it's operational. So really and truly, the only ongoing obligations going forward are for the city to then pay the development incentive that was promised. But with this technical default, we were looking to the council to decide whether you wanted to waive it or if we should continue to pursue trying to get some sort of subordination with the existing lender. We think the risk to the city is minimal at best because, again, the ongoing obligations are with the city but not the developer.
Anything to add, Director Burdick?
No, I can just, I can supplement and substantiate that, yes, to the rest of this agreement has been, to our understanding, substantially complied with, and this is the only outstanding item that, as the attorney stated, doesn't seem to have much of a practical implication at this point.
So any questions from the committee?
I have just a couple things. And so in the past, when we've had situations with development agreement where the development is substantially complete or complete, and the taxpayer risk is basically none, and so now here we sit on a technicality. In the past, we have, as a committee, declared those agreements substantially complete, and we've been willing to issue those waivers and work with people. If the building wasn't up or was half up, I would have a completely different attitude about this, but it's done. And they've fulfilled their end of the bargain. So, other than sending people back through a bunch of machinations that really don't yield a different outcome, and then just making people's life more difficult, I would certainly advocate that we as a committee agree that the development agreement was complied with in spirit, their obligation was complete, and that we continue to move forward. I mean, we're looking at a multi-phased project here, and I think it makes sense that we just go forward and work with the developer.
So is that a motion?
It is.
Is there a second?
So my motion would be to waive that filing requirement and declare the agreement substantially complete and complied with.
Alder Hanky, and then we can continue to have discussion. So Alder Hanky, the second?
I was going to second, yeah.
Yep. Okay, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It states in the packet that some attempts to contact the relevant individual was made on 2 occasions, and there wasn't any substantive response. Could you elaborate on what the lack of substantive response indicates? Was there any response? Was it?
We would receive some calls back or basically acknowledgments of some kind of communication, but then there was, obviously, we're still at the point of non-compliance of this particular piece of the agreement. So when I say lack of substantive response, it was lack of anything that moved, that basically didn't bring this to this committee. So we're still sitting on this.
Okay, and the reason I asked is these are often described as kind of public-private partnerships, and I'm a little concerned that our partner in the private sector apparently couldn't take more time to respond to these concerns, if that's what it suggests. And in terms of just kind of enforcing our contracts and agreements. My colleague called them machinations, I believe, or that's what we would go through. I think I've been, even before being on the council, I've seen time and time again, we've had agreements with expectations or metrics, and on multiple occasions, they have not been met or they've been out of compliance. And I think there's been a pattern by the city of just waiving that and saying, c'est la vie. But I do feel it's important that we actually start enforcing our contracts and agreements, once again, for the long-term protection of the city, so that the private sector actually knows that when we have an agreement, we expect that it's complied with. So unless it's moving mountains or flying to the moon, I'd like to try to see if we could get the agreement complied with. And if that would be impossible at this stage in the game, I would understand perhaps and revisit my opinion. But if it's not, my position would be to comply with the agreement that we had on the table. Thank you.
So I guess my question is, what is the process of having this having our priority redone? Is it a long, drawn-out process? I guess this is a question for the attorney.
Thank you. The process would require the lender to effectively subordinate their mortgage to this memorandum. So it's not a long, drawn-out process. It would just require the developer's lender to comply. It's not something that the developer can do unilaterally.
Any other?
I guess the question I have is, and like I said, my attitude about this would be completely different if the building was in progress, but it's not. It's done. It's up, and they're paying taxes on it coming up here in terms, to uphold their part of the bargain. So, if we are going to then require that the developer and the lender go back and, basically reissue the mortgage, reissue that paperwork, does that then create an issue between the lender and the developer? If it does, it's not worth it. I mean, it's just not. And so, I think that's something that we need to know. If it represents a substantial filing cost for the developer or the lender, it's also not worth it. And I get the fact that a contract's a contract. I mean, I've said that about other agreements myself. But this is substantially complete. And, Isaac himself said, from a taxpayer risk standpoint, it's minimal, if any. So, I think that's what we need to take into account here. And, I think there's value in having a discussion with the developer. I mean, we're still working with the developer on the other phases, and make it clear that it's the sentiment of this committee that when the city staff and the city attorney's office calls this particular developer with questions or requests, that it behooves them to answer and comply. But, I think that message can be conveyed without a complete refiling of the loan. So,
Any other additional comments, discussion? Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, so this would be on the motion by Alder Rasmussen. Again, waiving noncompliance with condition precedent to the city's obligation to provide tax increment grant installment. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
No. So 4 to 1. And now we are going to item 8. And so can I read them all together? Because they're all like one closed session statement?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, all right, so number 8 is discussing and possible action on developer request for demolition expense pursuant to Plaza Hotel Multifamily Phase 1 Development Agreement at 201 North 17th Avenue. And number 9, discussion and possible action on developer request for Phase 2 tax increment grant for multifamily redevelopment at 201 North 17th Avenue. So I believe we're going into closed session, so is there anyone that would be willing to read the closed session language?
Is there any, I was looking to see if Michael Roy was here. Is there anything that the committee should hear or deal with in open session before they go into close? No.
Okay. So absent open session material, then I will make a motion that we enter into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paragraph 1, sub G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved regarding a developer request for demolition expense pursuant to Plaza Multifamily Phase 1 Development Agreement at 201 North 17th Avenue, and the developer requests for tax increment grant allocated to Phase 2 for multifamily redevelopment at the same address.
Is there a second? Alder Hanky? Okay, and then we vote, right? All those in favor?
Roll call on closed session.
Oh, roll call?
Yep.
Okay, so Alder Rasmussen?
Aye.
Alder Hanky?
Aye.
Alder Killian?
Aye.
Alder Lukens?
Aye.
And then I would say aye. So we are, yes, going into closed session.